there's this apology channel on TikTok that I follow. I find it fascinating, and he addresses this whole issue. And it's also on YouTube. He addressed, and this guy isn't like he's not like the.
I think I know who you're talking about.
He's not like the Joe. It's called Saints Unscripted, and he has a video.
That's a different.
So he's not. I wouldn't even say he's like really hardcore like the Joseph Smith Foundation. I think he's pretty liberal in his approach. So he has a video where he talks about why Mormons have why LDS have multiple temples. And he says, some people will say, hey, you guys can't have more than one temple. Deuteronomy 12 is one temple. And his explanation, the explanation he offers is, no, that was made up by Josiah during the Josianic Reformation, that Moses didn't write that. That's his explanation. That was added by, the priest in the temple, Hilkiah, or somebody in the court of Josiah, or Josiah, whatever. He doesn't get to that. Right, the Deuteronomist, right? But he's essentially saying Deuteronomy 12 is just made up. That's not from God. We know it's from God.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing what he said, and I might be getting it wrong. But what I understood he said is, what came from God is what we know from Joseph Smith and our prophets in the LDS Church. And what you see in Deuteronomy 12, that's somebody who wanted power and wanted to concentrate, which is what secular scholars say, right? Someone who wanted to concentrate the power of the Jerusalem temple. He proclaimed there's only allowed to be one temple.
There is that in the documentary Hypothesis.
Absolutely, that's the explanation of the Deuteronomist.
There is a competition of where the Holy Mount is, which priesthood is going to win.
Right.
Yeah, I understand the guy's argument.
So then I wrote to him on the video. I said, well, I looked at the Joseph Smith papers. We have what, at least according to the Joseph Smith papers, is Joseph Smith's copy. And in Deuteronomy 14, he says, Joseph Smith says something to the effect of, in the note, everything up until Deuteronomy 14 is correct. So if Deuteronomy 12 was made up by Josiah or somebody in his court in the temple, wouldn't Joseph Smith have pointed that out to us? I don't know. It's just, so I don't understand how a modern apologist could ignore, if Joseph Smith is restoring the true scripture as it came from the mouth of the prophets, then why would you ignore that he says that Deuteronomy 12 is correct, right? I don't know. It's just...
I don't know. I don't know. The multiple temple thing is, Joseph Smith has to solve that problem since he wants to build a New Jerusalem temple himself.
Okay.
And so the question is, by what authority are you going to run this temple? And by what authority did these Ephraimites or Manasseh, and Ephraim, it's supposed to be both of them there.
Okay.
The tribe of Joseph is the wrong tribe for the priesthood to run the temple.
Right.
And he solved that by introducing the Melchizedek priesthood.
Wow.
Why? And Jews struggled with this question too. I mean, by what authority did Abraham offer sacrifice?
Right.
And the patriarchs, and usually it ends up going to Psalms 110.
Right. I'm impressed that you know that. That's very interesting. That is one of the Jewish explanations, is to say that that God took the priesthood from Melchizedek and handed it off to Abraham, and then eventually Abraham gives it to or gets to the hands of Aaron. Right. That's interesting.
So you're talking it gets to Moses, but it gets to that's an Aaronic priesthood temple for animal sacrifice and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about Melchizedek priesthood temples.
Right. Well, and then the other, I'm saying on the Jewish side, the other explanation, which I think is probably the more common Jewish explanation, is to say that, the limitation of, it's really Leviticus 17, not just Deuteronomy 12, right? Both of those passages together limit where you're allowed to bring sacrifices. Well, before that was revealed, God hadn't, there is this idea of progressive revelation. And then Deuteronomy 12:32 says, don't add and don't subtract from anything I've commanded you today. So up until that time, God could bring in new revelations. Just from that point forward, you weren't allowed to change things. So there is an idea of progressive revelation. So Noah bringing a sacrifice, most Jews would say, isn't a problem because at that time it hadn't been limited to the Aaronic priesthood.
Well, they had a temple, but they also had the tabernacle, and the tabernacle moved around.
For sure. Well, so there it gets complicated. The tabernacle wasn't. Anyway, that's beyond the scope of the discussion today. Right, and then there's the whole debate with the Samaritans where the true chosen place is. But again, that's a whole separate discussion. Right, because they would say the chosen place is Mount Gerizim, not Jerusalem. And I, as a Jew, would say they're wrong. But that's a different. That's beyond the scope of scholarship, I suppose, for here.